Hi everybody, this is the week 3 video presentation for Betsy Roslin, and
Michael Groisman.
we decided to use two data sets from one of the links that the professor provided, the network data repository, which is linked to here in our Jupyter notebook. We used Network X to visualize, and let's see, so we downloaded the two files here. We decided to do a comparison between dolphins and macaque monkeys to see what the difference is between their two social networks. So we did the dolphins first, and we should note that there was two dolphins that actually were removed from the file because one line. It contained a connection between two dolphins that were not connected to anything else in the network. So it was causing some problems with the graph, so we just removed them but noted it in our analysis. So just upon looking at the graph right away, you can see that there's some interesting things with some dolphins here, 3 of them that are connected to each other, but then only connected to the rest of the network through this one other dolphin, and one over here that's connected only to 2 other dolphins. So there's some interesting stuff going on there. Then we did our metrics and analysis, and I tried to follow along in the book and do almost everything that they did in the textbook. So we did eccentricity, radius, and diameter. And you can see the eccentricity has a small range between only 2 and 4. Then we did nodes, edges, and degree centrality, and did a histogram of the degrees. And you can see it's pretty left skewed. We also did the top 10 list like they did in the textbook. And then did the same top 10 for closeness centrality, and a histogram of that, betweenness centrality, and eigenvector centrality. So then we put together the table like in the textbook with the top 10 combined for for 3 of those metrics: degree, closeness, and betweenness. And you can see there's really only 13 dolphins that are the most influential in all 3 of those metrics. And then did a difference between that list and the top 10 for the eigenvector centrality to show if we had any of the so-called gray cardinals that were described in the book. And those would be dolphins that are not necessarily as well connected themselves, but are connected to a lot of other well-connected dolphins, and so have their influence through them. Then we did the same analysis for the macaque monkeys, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who will explain that and the difference between the two.
Yes, so we look at Macaque's network, and we try to compare Macaque's network to Dolphin network and see if there are any similarities or differences between those two networks. And actually, if you look at the Macaque's network, sorry about that, and you can see that Macaque's network is different from Dolphin's, and you can see that it's much more interconnected and it's much more compact. And so let's look at the differences and similarities between those two type of networks. Let us start with network size. We have 149 dolphins and we only have 62 macaques. So dolphins are bigger network with while macaques are much more compact. And the interesting thing is that we do have for dolphins we have disconnected network. There are 2 members that were outside of network, while macaques all were interconnected. Then we look at the average number of connections, and we had 21 connections on average for dolphins, and double that size, 38 connections for macaques. So we can see that dolphins generally don't have as many connections, and it don't necessarily means that they're not social creatures. It just might mean that they're quality of their connection is much stronger, and the quality of connection is much better than Macaque's connection that might be more superficial. Then we also look at the minimum and maximum number of connections, and there were dolphins that had only 2 connections. The dolphin was connected only to two other dolphins, while when we look at Macaques that had the least amount of connections, number was 17. So Macaques are really, even Macaques that had very few connections, still very well interconnected. And when we look at the maximum connections, then we saw that there was a dolphin with 69 connections, that actually half, the dolphin was connected to half of other dolphins in the network. And we had a monkey that had 55 connections. That monkey practically knew every other monkey in the group. We look at the distribution of degrees, and as it was already mentioned, that dolphins distribution is heavily left skewed, while Macaque's distribution is more normal. So we can see that Macaque's connections are much more balanced, and there is not as much variability between different Macaques. And we look at the closeness centrality, and we see that dolphins are not as closely centered as Macaques, which actually is in line with what we have seen before. And we look at the betweenness centrality, and they were somewhat similar to both dolphins and Macaques, while Macaques are a little bit higher betweenness centrality. And when we look at the eigenvector centrality, we saw that dolphins and Macaques both similar, which would mean that leaders in the group play similar role, and hierarchy is similarly built. However, we had dolphins that had eigenvector centrality almost 0, which would mean that the dolphin practically doesn't participate in the network at all, while there was no Macaque that had value close to 0, which would mean that every Macaque plays role in a network, and every Macaque important for the network. We look at the radius and diameter, and radius actually is the same for both networks. It's 2, which means that both groups are very highly connected, and they have high connected individuals. Diameter is actually smaller for Macaques, and it's 2 for Macaques and 4 for dolphins, which means that Macaques are much tighter group, much interconnected group, and much more uniformly distributed, with much more uniformly distributed connections. And in conclusion, I would like to say that that even so, the both networks are very social, and both animals are very social. Social interactions are much more important for Macaques. Macaques cannot exist outside of a network, while there are dolphins that have very little social connectivity, while there are dolphins with a high level. So there is much more variability in the dolphin group. And so thank you for listening to us. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.